Hey guys, this is Jason Bishop. I'm a magician and illusionist. I've been a professional magician for well over 10 years. I've had 2 successful shows in New York City, performed at the Magic Castle in Los Angeles, California. I've also performed at tons of theaters across the United States as well as colleges. Been to 49 of the 50 states and a bunch of countries all through magic. So I'm going to review some magic right now. I just randomly pull up a video from online about magic and I watch it and I let you know what I think about it. I have no idea what I'm getting into when I pull these things up, and we'll see if it's fun or interesting. So let's get started. This one is called Top 10 Craziest Magic Tricks Ever Performed. So we're gonna start this and see what it's all about.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 craziest magic tricks. For this list, we'll be looking at the craziest illusions and magic tricks that have amazed and confused audiences throughout history. However, there's a limit of 1 trick per magician, and trick secrets will not be revealed. How do they phase that cap through that bottle, though?
Don't do any tricks we can't control.
Number 10, Chop Cup, Paul Daniels.
You take that and you put it there and you use one of these.
One of the first magic tricks the world has ever seen. A cup and balls routine involves cups and disappearing balls. Paul Daniels, however, put his own twist on this classic trick.
You're not following this, are you?
With an
I kind of really admire Paul Daniels. I haven't seen a lot of his work, but I know that he started working in like pubs or men's clubs, I guess they're called, in England, UK. So these guys had just gotten out of work, in mines or very blue collar kind of jobs. And he'd go into these clubs and they were, rough, demanding audiences. And he had to really prove himself. So he couldn't just do magic. He had to entertain them. He had to be funny. He had to be witty, charming, and that's a place to really learn your craft, learn how to be a good entertainer. So I really admire Paul Daniels for that. And then he went on to have, this is probably from his own television show, he had a really successful show in England for, 5 or 10 years, quite a while he had it. So this is probably from his show. And every week, I think it was, it was a reoccurring episodic kind of show. He would do, a bunch of new magic, illusions, mind reading, close-up magic. So they're saying this is one of his top tricks. I've heard that a couple times. I don't know if it is or not, but I mean, kind of anything Paul Daniels did was entertaining. So let's see what he does here.
that could even put stand-up comedians to shame. The godfather of modern magic keeps his audience engaged with his unique brand of British banter, while the ball appears and disappears impossibly quickly in his version of Chop Cup.
Because when you go flick, everybody claps. Why do they clap? Because when you flick, you've got a lemon.
The trick usually ends with the ball turning into a lemon, and we still can't figure out how. The former Magician of the Year sadly passed away in 2016, but his Chop Cup performance is still one of the best because of Daniel's showmanship.
If you clap that, you'll go mad over the orange. I don't know where that...
Great visual trick. He's got a plexiglass table there, so you can see underneath it. There's nothing coming from underneath the table. So, definitely a great visual trick. Good magic.
Number 9. Jackhammer Swallowing, Thomas Blackthorne. Sure, sword swallowing was popular back in the day, but to keep up with technological advances, Thomas Blackthorne decided to go more modern.
People think they're all collapsible fake swords. Sometimes they are. I don't know if there are any really good collapsible fake swords. They all kind of look gimmicky. I guess your esophagus, your throat is kind of a straight line if you line it up well enough, so these people can really stick these swords down there. I believe some people have pierced their stomach lining with a sword. You could slice your throat, you could give abrasions to your throat that could lead to something negative health-wise, so definitely dangerous. Never heard of this performer. Have you guys heard of this dude? If you put it in the comments below. Jackhammer swallowing, we'll see where that goes. Everybody one-ups it. You gotta one-up it and take things to the next level, so that would be to the next level. I'm interested to see this. Here we go.
Probably infinitely more dangerous than putting a sword in your mouth, Blackthorne takes it to the next level by slowly lowering a working jackhammer down his throat on live TV. He might look a little like The Undertaker, but this insane feat thankfully hasn't done him in. Yet. Well, what do you expect from the world record holder for lifting the heaviest object with his tongue? We still don't know if the jackhammer trick is even real or not, but for Blackthorne's sake, you have to hope not. Yeah. Number 8. Coin in arm, Criss Angel. Gross. This trick definitely isn't for the faint of heart. Criss Angel, the same magician who rips people's bodies in half and raises people from the dead, does not disappoint with this stunning act of self-mutilation. After swallowing a coin, Chris makes it flow down his arm until he uses a knife to cut his skin and take it out, blood and all, to show it to his disturbed audience. Maybe this trick works so well because it's so hard to watch without looking away.
Yeah, definitely pretty gross. I remember seeing that on Mind Freak, back when he was doing that show years ago, and it caught my attention. I mean, that's a real trick, he's really creating an illusion there. And I like that about some of the bigger magicians, David Copperfield, Chris Angel at times. They just push magic. They take a concept, the concept is a coin vanishes that's maybe signed, and then it's lost, and then you find it. Well, he cuts open his arm, and he finds it in there and pulls it out of there, and here's your signed coin that you just had a moment ago. So definitely taking it to another level. Yeah, that's a cool trick. I like that. All right, so...
No, Chris walked on water like a modern messiah, but the coin trick is more imaginative, and the shock factor alone is enough to give it a spot on this list. Number 7, the Dove Act, Lance Burton. Let's face it, when people think of the typical magician, they picture Lance Burton.
I guess they do picture him. Lance Burton's not, unfortunately, as much of a household name as some other magicians. When I was coming up, I fluctuated between really admiring Copperfield and Lance Burton. And, David Copperfield did long, elaborate shows. He'd do hour-and-a-half shows, and he'd make these specials that were an hour long each year. He won 21 Emmys or something. Lance was known more for doing about a 12-minute act using doves and candles and cards. Really difficult, high-end, what's called manipulation act. It's like sleight of hand, but you do it on stage. Using, like I said, candles, balls, birds, things like that. He did this act for 9 years or something at the Folies Bergère in Las Vegas. And there is an Olympic competition of magic in the world. It's called FISM, the Federation International Society of Magic. And it's in French, though, and I don't speak French. But Lance, at 21, I think it was, flew to Lausanne, Switzerland. I'm butchering that name. Lausanne, Switzerland. He competed there, and he won the top prize, the Grand Prix. It's only held every 4 years, somewhere around the world, usually in Europe very often. And he was the first American, USA. He was the first American to ever win this. And his magic is so thoughtful, sophisticated, smooth, borderline perfect. And hopefully they'll show quite a bit of it here because it's fantastic. He does perfect magic.
Or at least someone who looks like him. And this entry is just what you imagine when you hear the word magic. No delays, no banter, just intense music and continuous sleight of hand. Burton performs a series of tricks involving live doves, playing cards, and fire. But don't worry, no animals were injured in the making of this illusion. You will most likely be baffled throughout most of the fast-paced tricks, but you'll be kept wondering, where the hell does he keep those birds? If you want to see a classic act that brings you back to the golden days of magic, then Lance Burton's dove performance.
And it turns back into the cloth that he'd been using throughout. So some of the props are cyclical. He does something with a prop, then the prop transforms into something, then that something transforms back into the prop. The color scheme is all there. Everything's white, white doves, white candles, white cloth. So well thought out, just so perfect. And his stance, his birds are flying where they need to fly. I don't know if this type of act gets any better than what Lance Burton did.
Performance is for you. Number 6, spitting up a live frog, David Blaine.
A small creature that can fit in the palm of Drake's. You don't know what.
Ah, yes, David Blaine. An illusionist so believable, people have accused him of calling on the forces of the underworld to perform magic.
It rained frogs in Egypt.
It rained frogs,
It rained frogs in Egypt.
Setting loose live frogs from within his own body seems to be the wrong way to deal with those accusations. Drake, Dave Chappelle, and NBA player Stephen Curry get hysterical, but mostly disturbed when Blaine leans back and hawks up a living, moving frog into their champagne glasses. And he does this 3 times. The frogs even try to escape.
Get your frog, son!
Maybe Blaine does have some deal with the Dark Lord.
Pretty cool. I saw him do that first on, I think it was like the Jimmy Fallon Tonight Show. I was surprised and I thought about it a little bit, but when I started in magic, I was less interested in the tricks and more interested in books about the history of magic and the magicians themselves. Keller, Thurston, Alexander Herman, Harry Houdini, Robert Houdin. In reading these books, you'd find out these weird old tricks about a guy would swallow kerosene and then he'd swallow water and then he'd have a fire and then he'd spit the kerosene onto the fire and it would go up in flames and then he'd bring up the water from inside himself and spit that out. onto the kerosene and out in the fire. And these are kind of legendary tricks, swallowing, somehow bringing frogs up, things like that, maybe being buried alive. I always kind of went over those because they seemed a little gross, a little carny sideshow, but they also seemed like maybe they weren't even possible, frankly. So David Blaine, he's almost this magic archaeologist. He goes back, looks at these insane things, and then actually develops the skills, the ability, comes up with the tricks, whatever you want to call it, to be able to accomplish these things. I'd certainly really admire him for that. That's crazy. I mean, he's really doing that to the best of my knowledge, and it puts him in a class all his own. I mean, he's a multi-millionaire who's willing to spit up frogs, so that's pretty cool. I mean, the guy will do, it seems like he'll do just about anything for his art, and you always have to appreciate that. So let's see what this is.
5. Tiny plunger, John Armstrong. So how did John get his arm strong? By playing with this tiny plunger, of course.
It is adorable.
Penn and Teller loved every second of this performance, which first sees Armstrong lifting numerous cards at the same time with a plunger.
Tiny plunger will now memorize the entire deck of cards.
It gets crazier when the magician lifts up the exact number of cards called for,
Oh, wow.
and even cuts the cards with the plunger on a precise card that's unknown to the magician, but which someone previously chose. Armstrong brings his unique brand of comedy to the act, keeping us entertained and possibly distracted throughout. But maybe he shouldn't get all the credit, as he tells us that it's the plunger doing all the work.
You did not fool me,
Okay.
but that little plunger did.
Number 4.
That's pretty cool. I hadn't seen that before. I've seen some John Armstrong stuff. He's a very good close-up magician, perhaps world-class, I guess. He's out of the Magic Castle a lot in LA. I believe he performs there quite a bit, and then he goes on the road and actually lectures other magicians, not like in a derogatory way. Now, he provides lectures of how to perform better, how to do tricks better, and different material that he's come up with. I've never seen that trick by him. Very creative, interesting adaptation of card magic that way. That was really cool. I like that. I hadn't seen that before.
Chinese water torture cell, Harry Houdini. One of the most famous magicians of all time brings us this unfortunately named trick.
If you look at that, in every movie you ever see the water torture cell, it looks really large. It looks like a big thing. But even the outside of that, I think, is a metal structure, and then the glass and tank is inside. It's really tight. It's very sort of claustrophobic. I mean, Houdini was a badass. This guy was jumping off bridges. He was getting tied to horses and escaping from that. He's getting handcuffed by Scotland Yard. He had, an open invitation for anybody to come to his shows with their own custom handcuffs. He'd make sure they worked, of course, because sometimes people would drop metal pellets in there and stuff like that into the mechanism of the handcuff so that it couldn't even open. He'd have them bring their own custom handcuffs, and he'd get out of them on stage. It was a challenge handcuff thing. But this trick, it's so tight, and I don't know, being lowered upside down into a thing of water and locked inside. I mean, regardless of how it's done, you have to be able to hold your breath that long, upside down, and not panic, and maybe have a signal for your crew to get you out, but they can't get you out instantly. So kudos to Houdini. He's another guy in the vein of David Blaine, is in the vein of Harry Houdini, where they did anything for their art. Let's check out Houdini's water torture cell. I don't think they're going to show the whole thing because I don't even know if there's full footage of it. I'm not sure.
Trick. Invented in 1911 in England, and having nothing to do with China, this act was one that Houdini routinely performed throughout the remainder of his...
Yeah, so they're recreating it from this movie or something like that because, Houdini was only coming in the cusp of film, although he was a pretty big film star too, which is kind of interesting. He was technically the first action hero. He was also the first person to kill a robot on film as such. So a lot of firsts with Houdini. Interesting guy.
Career. Restrained by the legs, suspended from above, and then slowly dunked into a chamber of water seems torturous enough. But Houdini, known for his escape routines, would always come out unscathed. Houdini made it a mission to call out frauds at the time, so maybe this escape isn't an illusion at all. And he actually was in danger whenever he performed this trick.
He was.
But that's just what we expect from one of the greatest escapologists and stuntmen to have ever
ripped
lived.
100 years ago.
Number 3. Head removal. Cyril Takayama.
Let me just clear my throat.
If you ever hear this magician say, "Let me just clear my throat," you should run far away. Well, unless you want to see a man's head suddenly drop down to his stomach area, where he catches it and then painfully places it back on his shoulders. It's even scarier when he decides to walk towards you with it in his hands, like on this Japanese show. We have no idea how he does this. His clothes stay at their regular height, but his neck is just gone. It's certainly one way to make an impression.
Yeah, that's a great trick. I believe the creator of that illusion, gosh, the name escapes me. If you remember it, put it in the comments. I used to know this dude's name all the time. I talked to him once in a while online. Really creative, comes up with a lot of magic, actually. He probably licensed that, I'm thinking, to Cyril. Sometimes magicians steal other magicians' tricks. Pretty uncool. The dude's name is Raphael. That's right, I believe it's Raphael. Really inventive dude, really brilliant dude. Yeah, so that's a great trick. I couldn't imagine being on the street and somebody comes up and does that. It's a really good illusion, so it's very cool. David Copperfield, it looks like we got here.
Number 2, Invisible Man, David Copperfield. Since he's one of the most successful magicians in history and holder of 11 Guinness World Records, we don't know why David Copperfield would ever want to make himself invisible. After a lighting effects demonstration, which shows lasers causing sparks on his clothes, he gets his 2 lovely assistants to cover his midsection as he somehow separates himself in 2. Moments later, we see him separate himself in 2 again, except this time his body isn't covered, and he's able to hold on to his legs and walk alongside his torso. We're pretty sure there's either a top half or a bottom half that's invisible here, right? Copperfield making the entire...
No, they're totally off on that, but the fact of the matter is that is a very cool illusion, and I believe he's the only person who does that particular illusion at this point. I won't get into the total lineage of it as to how I'm aware of it, but it's a very cool trick. It's something that David likes to do, pieces of magic that only he does, and if it's even something derivative of something else, he really makes it distinct and different. So that was a cool trick. I forgot about that one.
The entire Statue of Liberty disappear is remarkable, but in accordance with this list, this trick is crazier.
You gotta remember, this is before cocaine was illegal.
Cocaine was always illegal.
Really?
Before we unveil our number 1 pick.
I think that's a hidden secret about David Copperfield. He has a really good sense of humor. He's a funny dude, I find anyway. I think he's a funny guy.
Here are some honorable mentions.
Pendragons. Yeah. Sick. Yeah, so that was the Pendragons, Jonathan Pendragon and his wife at the time, Charlotte Pendragon. They did the Metamorphosis illusion that was popularized by Harry Houdini. Every illusionist has done that. I've done it. David Copperfield's done versions of it. Chris Angel did a great version of it. Siegfried and Roy, Doug Henning all did great versions of it. But Jonathan and Charlotte, they were gymnasts previously. Jonathan was a stunt man. He was in the movie Blues Brothers. He did the John Belushi's stunts of doing backflips and some other stuff. And they could just do that illusion instantly. No magician could match what they did. The way they handled the cloth, the way they appeared, the way they were superimposed. Just fantastic illusion. This is, looks like Harry Blackstone here. Harry Blackstone Jr., actually. Let's see. Yep, there we go. Richard Ross. Yeah. Great magic. It's cool they're showing this.
Number 1, Bullet Catch, Penn and Teller.
We need 2 people who know guns, preferably handguns.
While the trick itself is old, Penn and Teller have been performing it since the 90s, introducing their own brand of humor to the act.
See, under his initials, he's drawn a lightning.
There's some people who look at magic and they think they know everything right away, even though I don't even know why they think that, but some people don't like to be fooled, be tricked, be amazed. I don't know. But this, the Bullet Catch has killed quite a few people. It's 8 or 10. It might be more than that. It's quite a few people. There was a very big magician at the turn of the century. His stage name was Chung Ling Soo. Yeah, Chung Ling Soo, I believe. And he did the Bullet Catch for years and years and years. And one night on stage, he had, 5 or 6 guys. He had a little army, a little row of people, and one of the guns had a real bullet in it as such. And he would always catch it on a plate, I believe it was. Well, this night he got shot and he died. He died maybe a day or so later in the hospital. I'm not sure exactly. If you know, let me know in the comments. But yeah, definitely an actually dangerous trick. I mean, these things are real guns. It looks like their guns are real. They have people inspecting them. A lot of times it's ex-military, police, etc. So I don't know how they accomplish this trick. It's a really good version of this trick. Very modern. It uses some, Magnum revolver or something like that. Let's see what they do.
Bolt. It's primitive, but shows a great deal of promise there.
That's on the casing.
Audience members sign bullets that are placed into separate guns. Penn and Teller then shoot at each other, coming up with the other's bullet in his mouth. Shocking to say the least. And while it's easy to dismiss it as an illusion, the trick has actually killed or wounded numerous artists over the decades. The elevated risk of danger and the sheer badassery of catching a bullet in your mouth is enough to give this trick our top spot.
Ace Ventura does it there. It's an interesting added element too of danger or difficulty because there's two guys doing it. So they're shooting at each other, which is an interesting idea. It allows an audience member not to be up there and potentially get hurt. That's important. And I'm sure the guys have made a pact with each other that if something went wrong, they don't blame the other one. I don't know, but I don't know the real level of difficulty. Certain illusions look dangerous and they're not. Other illusions don't look that dangerous and they actually can be. Like levitating somebody may not look that dangerous, but a lot of people have been pretty severely injured being levitated. You mix heights with magic and you can have some problems. But yeah, two people shooting at each other, I guess that's twice the likelihood of error too. So I don't know how frequently they do that anymore. I'm not sure. Again, I don't know the method of that trick, so I'm not gonna speculate on how difficult that version is, but I think anytime when you have live guns on stage or guns on stage, you have a real element of danger.
Do you agree with our picks?
Those are some pretty good pieces of magic. It was the top 10 craziest magic tricks ever performed, WatchMojo.com. 23 million views. A lot of people viewed that. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you found this interesting. If you did, please hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe if you haven't. If you have subscribed, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Please do hit the bell to be notified when I post new videos. And thanks a lot. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.